Okay. All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
This is
Yeah,
unusual.
yeah. I just saw a Slack note from Jesse that 5 libraries are experiencing downtime now. So they're working on it.
I'll be interested to hear what made the difference, if if anything rational or knowable.
Yeah.
I
Seems
just got an update on our ticket, and she says, thanks for your continued patience. We're working with our upstream provider for resolutions. Due to the complexity of the situation, we aren't able to give a definitive timeline of restoration, but we are hoping very soon.
Oh, see, that sounds like Rackspace broke it.
mhm.
Backing up, I realized I hadn't clicked record. So for posterity, welcome to the koha-US Systems Administration SIG, where we talk about the systems administration module and system preferences and SQL and stuff. But probably today we talk a fair amount about the 2405 upgrade that was supposed to happen for early adopters last night. And it did happen, just with mixed success.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with the
Yeah,
email in the Slack. Okay.
absolutely. Well, I went through it. Our system is up on 2405, and I went through my very short and unexciting list of things to change. Our
Mhm.
hotspots are doing a 3-day hold pickup now. Hooray.
Yeah.
I think that means we can get rid of a special little laminated doodad that sits on the hold shelf for the hotspots.
Mhm.
I love getting rid of a weird little laminated doodad.
That's great.
I haven't set up our open and close times yet, which will let our laptops start giving accurate at end of day due dates or due times, which will be fun if anyone ever checks out one of our laptops again. It hasn't happened for like a year and a half.
Mm. Wow.
So, I don't know. Everybody else got systems administration questions? Things they've been working on or fighting with or really excited about?
So I have some of that. But the main thing that I ran into with the upgrade was it seems like anywhere I've got a direct report link, those don't work. I have to change some of the string parameters to make it work again. And I have that in a lot of places. So
Mm,
that might be, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Maybe I don't think it's just a me problem, but the parameters that changed were instead of reports, it needs ID, and instead of phase run this report, it needs OP equals run
okay.
in the actual link text. So it's an easy enough find and replace in my jQuery. It's a little harder in SQL reports that are referencing other reports. I don't know. I just noticed that on my test server first thing when I started clicking around.
Cool, that is good to know. I absolutely have reports linked hither and thither that will need to be updated. Here, let me share my screen and give a visual example. On my laptop rather than my usual like multi-monitor thing, and it is messing me up. Here on our Koha homepage, I have a link to a missing materials report. This report includes a runtime parameter of what branch you're logged in at. And yeah, it looks like it doesn't work. So you're saying it wants, instead of reports equals, it wants report
Nope,
ID?
ID, just ID. And then instead of and phase equals that chunk, change that to OP equals run. So instead of phase, OP.
Capital or lowercase?
Lowercase. And it should work when you hit enter.
Hey, cool. I'm gonna copy that. Put it there. And let's get what it wanted to be before that didn't work. Cool. Thanks, Jason. That is good to know and an easy fix. And probably a fix I will be continuing to make for months to come as I find the other places where I have linked to a report somewhere. Any other upgradey questions or concerns? Well, cool. So any other non-upgradey things people are working on or excited about?
I mean, I have a few things.
Yeah, go for it.
So one thing that one of my libraries asked for was the ability to have certain staff member, their circ staff, be auto logged out after a certain period of time, which I was like, sure, because I had the auto exit from the checkout screen thing that I wrote, so I adapted that. But then I was worried about the privacy of it all, because if I target certain staff members' usernames, then you can see that in my jQuery code when you inspect the page source, and I didn't really want that.
Sure.
So I found a way to leverage reports in my jQuery using a patron list, and I was pretty pleased with how that turned out, and I can share some of what that looks like. So it's using sort of the same logic as the patron permissions thing, I guess, because it's leveraging a patron list. So I've got the patron list. I wrote this really complex report that pulls the user IDs of the people on the list. It's just give me the user IDs from the people on the list. And then I'm leveraging that in some jQuery that is all set up with the timers and junk. So I can set it, right now it's set to just 1.5 minutes because for testing, so I don't have to set and wait and wait and wait. And I set it up so you can like enter your report number and your list number up at the top. So it's easier to share this with other people, which I haven't put on the wiki yet, but I will eventually. It adds a warning in the upper right corner after a certain amount of time. So after a minute, it adds the warning, and then after a minute and some change, it logs you out in this scenario. If you move the mouse, I made it so that it restarts the timer, and the timer gets a little weird, but it mostly works. And then so this is to bring the warning back after you move the mouse. This is the function that actually logs out. The only thing it doesn't do very well is remember where you were after you logged out. So it's going to bring you back to the home screen when you log back in. This is the actual code pulling the report. So it's pulling that report and the list number. It's running the report with the report number, list number variables there. Stringifying the staff users out of that report, and then it puts them into a little array. And yeah, it makes it work for the people on the list, basically. So what it looks like when you log in to somebody that's on the list. Oh no, this was fixed and now it's not. Okay. So, like I said, the timer is real short on my test server, so you can see the warning pop up in the upper right pretty fast, and then it starts to count down for a minute, and after a minute, it logs person out. And I also like this approach because it means I don't have to manage it. Like I can just tell my librarians, hey, put them on that list if you want their auto log out. The values are sort of hard coded. So like I've got a list of staff users that log out at 5 minutes. If I wanted to do variations on the timing, then it would have to be multiple lists at this point. I haven't figured out a smart way to change that yet.
So the jQuery looks at the report output. The report output is functionally a copy of the list.
Yep.
And then that makes sense. And then it feels like it should be easier to just point the jQuery at the list rather than putting a report in the middle, but I can see how that's just not the way it works.
Yeah, I don't think that there's an API endpoint for patron lists. I was looking at that. If there was, that would be the easier solution. But when you type in list in the API, it's like everything because list is a thing. But I did briefly look at that before I started digging. But I was pleased that I could make it so that I don't have to put in usernames in the raw JavaScript because that made me nervous.
Yeah, one, it's a bad place to maintain that list too. Like to go back into that big messy system preference every time you need to like put somebody's username in or take somebody's username out.
Yeah, and I have some other code like that, so I need to go back and it's just for like my catalogers and stuff, but I need to go back and reevaluate that.
Could you do this with a patron attribute that was like an attribute for logout period?
Yeah, I think you could leverage it in the same way. And maybe then you could leverage the API instead. That's a good idea.
Well, it could make it easy to, you could just add options to the attribute for the different logout periods, and the code could differ its behavior based on the value there instead of making a bunch of lists.
Idea. I jot that down.
I don't know if it's a different idea. Might just be, yeah, lateral. That's fun though. I've definitely had folks ask about differing that logout period based on, yeah, like permissions or type of user. Because yeah, you definitely like you want to log out somebody at the start desk a lot quicker than you want to log out a cataloger.
Oh yeah, yeah. Our global pref is at 24 hours, I think. And if I lowered that at all, my catalogers would scream.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and or if koha's inactivity worked more like the one you've coded, where it was when koha says that log out due to inactivity, it means like you haven't loaded a page,
Right.
and which is a you don't load a lot of pages when you're looking at a mark record for a long time.
Yeah. I did go off the rails on one other thing if you want you want to see that.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
not specifically sysadmin-y, but so I've got a community college coming up that wanted to use our self-checkout. And since we're a consortium, community colleges are weird. They have student IDs instead of card numbers. Their student IDs are shorter digits. So I did a whole bunch of work to try and make all that work, and it turned out kind of cool. So let's see. Go back to my screen share. Okay, so let's see here. So I'm at the self-checkout screen. I added a little drop down that lets you pick your library. This is hard-coded, not pulling from a list right now, so that's why there's only 2 things there. I set it up so that when you choose this, it puts the value in local storage. So when I chose that, now I have the logged in library code as Fort Scott Community College. And this is something that I've wanted to work on forever, where I can like make the browser know where the patron is without having them logged in, so that I can have like more custom experiences basically for different libraries.
Sure.
So it remembers that as a cookie basically. And then when I log in, I can remember as a self-checkout patron. This is the screen that the community college is getting so that they can put in their student ID number. And it's just a short.
So that first login, that was the like staff login to turn the self-check on?
Correct, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it knows that I'm logged in as Fort Scott Community College. You can see it up there. It's still in the local storage. So that gives me custom code just for them. So I've got student ID. I made this little button to flip it over to card number. So what's going on in the background is when I type in a short number, it's padding out with a prefix into the actual card number. So that then it'll take me to an account. And then if I log out, which is tricky. If I log out and switch my library to Iola, which is not a community college, and log in again. Then I'm just getting the regular old self-check where it's just asking for a card number. So that was my big breakthrough that I could actually make branch limited stuff in the OPAC without being fully logged in.
That's cool. So those community college patrons are in Koha with a barcode value or a card number value that is
Oh yeah, I didn't show that part.
Like a transformation of some sort from their student ID number.
Correct. Let me reshare. So the way I set it up to accommodate that is when you go into the patient's account and add one, and you have to be. Ooh, I love this new little cogwheel. I know it's not useful for like my users, but it's useful for me, where you can just change the library up here without going to a different place. So you have to be logged in as them, and then when you go into add a student, I added a patron attribute for student ID, and when they type it, it does that padding out automatically for their card number, so that they can use their student ID still, but it remains, their card number remains unique in the system. And then that'll match up on the self-check side of things.
This is sort of weird, like data transformation stuff that I both love and hate. Like it always feels like there should be some way to just avoid this entire question, surely. But
yeah,
no,
but I
there's
couldn't
not.
come up with it.
Yes. So let's build this like fascinating, complicated thing to deal with it instead.
That's my life, building fascinating, complicated things to deal with stuff. I'll let you know if it all burns down when in real life, but right now it's working.
Oh, cool.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum, and I have a complete novice's question. Let me share my screen. So all I want to do is have a column that shows all the libraries, and then a column that shows how many check-ins, how many checkouts, how many renewals for the time period. But I'm getting crazy stuff, and I'm adapting this from something I found on the wiki. So I know this probably isn't the right way to do this. So any input would help.
I know how to write a report that does the thing you're trying to do in a different way. I don't know why the words you have there don't do it. Like what you've written makes a sort of sense, but it's not a thing I've tried before, so I don't know how it's going wrong exactly.
Okay. Sorry, oops, I didn't go into a new window.
I think you'd want to group that by branch, right? Because you want one line for each branch.
Oh, you're correct. I don't know, maybe that's all it needs to fix it then.
That
It was,
should do it, I think.
it was giving me wacky results,
I-
but that might be it.
It looks like you have an extra comma in there after renewals too.
There's just one comma.
But you shouldn't have a comma at the
Oh.
end of your select statement.
Oh, okay. Well, that should get me closer to
Yeah.
what I was after. Thank you, guys. It's hard when you don't have a second set of eyes to call upon easily.
Yeah. Trying to think about your use of that case statement, and if I can think of any reason why that is like functionally different from how I would have written it. I don't think so. It's the good and bad of SQL. Multiple ways to do everything.
Yeah. I'm running it again to see if it's a very slow report.
Sure. Well, and that might be a difference. It might go faster without the case statement.
So would you do an if then?
I would do an if within a sum, and I do a lot of sum ifs. It was a thing that Nick at Bywater taught me like very early on when I was working there, and became like one of my favorite dumb little SQL things. It's sort of a pivot table. I think of it as like it's a good way to move data from columns to rows. No, rows to columns.
Uh-huh.
Making sense. I could show you.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Let me do that. Here. This and share my screen. Okay. Let's Zoom thing out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to say select statistics S. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. So if the type is issue, give me a 1, and if it's not issue, give me a 0.
And sum those suckers up.
Yep.
Ah, that is so helpful. Thank you.
It's a really nice little bit of logic, and I don't think I ever would have thought of it on my own. It's like, so it's very brief, which is nice.
Yes. Yes. I would have never, ever, ever come up with that. And it does look like, I think the with those I made those edits, it's still giving some weird results, but I'm going to try your way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I will get something better.
Put this in the chat. My other guess, Chanel, it would be that I don't know, somehow the fact that you've got 3 separate case statements is making it go weird, but I don't know enough about how case works to have a real sense of how that works.
I don't really know what I'm doing either. So I've written a lot of SQL in my day, but it's usually just throw in a bunch of left joins and a few wheres and I'm done.
Yeah.
So all this case and concat and all these various things are kind of They're stressing my brain.
There are days when I, am less appreciative of the general like programmer mindset of let's store this data as simply and efficiently as possible. We can always do math on it later. Because sometimes you end up doing a lot of math in your
Well, I can say one thing that I was greatly or I was happily surprised by is that when they use or not all, probably not always, but often when or at least for the most frequently used things, when you use the foreign key, it's the actual value of the code. So you don't have to, you'd have to do a whole lot more left joining if it weren't for that.
Yeah, I feel like acquisitions might be the point where that gets a little bit less true. I feel like that's where I start having to join 1,000 tables just to get any data at all.
So is it the statistics table? That's where the circ information resides, right?
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying to wrap my head around exactly what that table represents.
statistics is like a transaction register. It's this thing happened at this time. This thing happened, this thing happened, this thing
Okay,
happened. There was a checkout, there was a check-in, there
got it.
was an excuse. Then
Got it.
there's also the issues table, which is one line or one row per checkout of an item, and it's more data about that checkout, like
Oh.
when it happened, where it happened, how many times has it been renewed.
Okay.
That's a distinction I struggle to articulate. How the issues table and the statistics table are recording different aspects of the same processes.
Yeah.
So what's the relationship between the issues table? Isn't there an old issues table and the statistics? And that's where I get messed up on.
Yeah, so like, say we have an item that gets checked out and renewed 2 times and then returned. In statistics, that's going to be 4 lines, a line for the checkout, a line for each renewal, and a line for the return. In issues and old issues, at the point of checkout, that creates a line in the issues table that says this thing is checked out to this patron, it's due on this date, and a little other information. That sits in the issues table while the item is checked out. As the item gets renewed, that row in the issues table gets updated to show those renewals. And then when that item gets returned, that row gets deleted from the issues table and basically just pasted into the old issues table with its like return date added into it. There is also now a renewals table. It's new. It's more like it's like the issues table for renewals. Well, except renewals aren't like a thing that exists for a time. And that's like what makes the issues table and statistics different. Statistics is recording a point in time where an action happened, and issues is remembering this concept of a checkout that's a thing that exists for a while. So the renewals table is good. I'm watching Jason's face as I say all this, and I don't know if he's making faces about what I'm talking about or something else entirely. But
I'm just wondering if I need to consider this renewals table. I think the main thing that gives us is whether it was automatic or manual, right? I pulled up the schema. It's more like a log. The renewals table is more like action logs than it is like anything I care about when I'm looking for running stats.
And that makes sense. So and the statistics table is more like a log than the issues table that is, more nebulous. And we haven't gotten into the pseudonymized transactions table yet. which is basically the same thing as statistics. It's a like transaction ledger. This thing happened at this time. But it doesn't record patron numbers. It instead records a whole bunch of non-identifying patron information, like demographic information.
So the issues table is real-time information. The old issues is past transactions. The statistics is both?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, at any time, the issues table should have one row for every item that is checked out from your library. And then as those things get returned, they all dump into old issues, which just grows forever.
You run a report and you base it on the issues table and the old issues table. Will those statistics equal if you ran it just on the statistics table? Is it a 1-to-1?
Theoretically, yeah. Like if you ran a report that said how many entries are there in the statistics table with type issue in this date range, that should give you the same number you get if you run a report that says count all of the lines in issues and old issues combined where the checkout date is in that same date range. There are surely ways that those numbers would get different. I can't think of them right now, but surely something.
I feel like a long time ago, I did those kinds of things and the numbers were different. And it was like trying to balance a checkbook and
yeah. Trying to balance a checkbook is a good metaphor for me in that, like, it's a thing I've given up on. That's probably important. Someone told me once it was good, but I don't know.
I was trying to look up reports like Chanel's report that we use. Turns out you can sum your case statements too if you like that syntax better.
No,
So
I have no love for the case statement.
But yeah, I mean, it gets the same results. I don't know if one's better than the other, but I had that in some of my other reports, so I thought I'd share that.
Well, all I can say at this point is that I don't know if it's the case statement's fault, but it runs extremely slowly. I've been putting in Andrew's version and I'm about to see how long it takes.
Well, and if it's really slow now, I suspect it will only get more slow as your system is up longer and the statistics table gets bigger.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I tried it both ways, and they're both pretty slow on my system. I don't know a way to make that faster.
Yeah, it's certainly taking its time. So I guess there's just no way around that.
Epic notes of what we have talked about.
I came to the meeting late because I didn't realize what time it was. But I'm wondering, Andrew, do
Yeah.
you have any nice SQL for authorities and blind authorities, counting authorities and blind authorities?
Sad to say I don't.
Oh.
Because I don't believe in authority records.
No, well, there is that plugin and it only goes, through your database a few thousand records at a time. But I suspect it does that for a reason, because anything I've tried to do just killed my system. So
yeah, that I've not used that plugin a lot, but that is my rough memory of why it exists, because
Yeah.
it's just too much data to dig through in straight SQL.
I had Bywater run and delete all of my authority records that didn't have any records attached. And so they can do that, you know, a bunch at a time where we can't. So that would be an option if you're with Bywater.
Or they could give you a script that you can run.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is my client wants to see them all beforehand and mull over them and whatever. So, but they don't want to run things. So they think I should run them all in groups, which I'm trying to avoid. But I fear I'll have to. Thank you.
I've found that I can do 10,000 at a time. If you override that limit, you can do 10,000 rather than 5,000, which is the default limit. But your system might be different, but I've found that it doesn't get mad at me when I do 10,000.
Okay, thank you.
Racking my brain for like useful bits of information to offer you. I have no great expertise. So you just, yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those things I have been thinking for the past week or two and asking all my colleagues and getting nowhere. And then I suddenly thought, we have sysadmin this week, I'll ask it. And then I nearly forgot to come to the meeting.
Does that
Sorry.
script give an option to like run on a verbose test mode, like to spit out a list of what it would be deleting rather than just deleting them?
It doesn't delete them. It just shows you can either get a file to export or you can see it in the screen, all of the ones that don't have any records. And then you can batch delete them. But I feel like as fast as I'm batch deleting the ones that we have, our koha system just keeps creating more just as fast because it's making weird random ones. Like every time we import a record, it'll make a new one sometimes. It's getting better. We've changed some settings, but I don't know if it's worth keeping up with.
Do you want your koha to be making authority records at all, or do you?
Yeah.
Okay. That seemed like a very simple question, but I was unsure from the way you set it up. And, you know, it seemed plausible that there was someone out there getting machine generated authority records when they wanted none at all, because it's all a mess. When I suspect it probably falls into a place where the cataloging SIG points at us and says, you should ask the sysadmin people how this all works. And then we point at them and we say, we don't know anything about cataloging.
I mean, I found a report that I have that is unlinked authors in the 100, but I don't think it works. I don't know where it came from, and I'm not actually sure what it's doing. But is that what you're looking for, Daphne? Is a list of
It
everything
is,
that...
but if you can't work out what it's doing, I haven't a hope, Jason, because you're way ahead of me.
Well, well, let me put it in a page bin for you in case you want to try it. It does
Thank you.
Stuff, and it's got some of my custom values and stuff in it, so it's not going to be like super useful, but there's that. And then I'll find it and share it so I can show you what it looks like. So it's giving a list of headings. I don't know why it's giving a title if it's not linked. This authority search link doesn't work. But if I link them, oh, no matching authority found. So there's no Aaron Daniel. I think this is the opposite of what you need. Maybe. These are headings that we have, or authors that we have that don't have authorities.
Yeah, that's probably the opposite. I mean, my requirement is very messy. It's because two libraries have merged and they insisted on bringing in, when we were importing all their bibliographic records, they wanted all their authorities in as well. So some of them are duplicates, and then some of them are now blind. So just got a big mess that I foresaw that it would happen, but the library knew better. I said, let's not do this. And they said, no, we must do it this way. So, but thank you for, if anyone gets inspiration, can let me know.
So
I
the
can't
sticking
see
point
it.
for like SQL wise, getting the list of authorities that aren't used in any bib is, am I correct that that breaks down because it's just too much computing power for it to look at your whole system and go through all of the bibs to find all the authority numbers that are in use and then compare that?
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
And they, like, it's probably quite acceptable what the client is saying. Well, can you even tell us how many there are? Now, I think they need to just take a decision to delete them, because there are tens of thousands of them, and they're never going to go through them and look at them individually and decide, do we want to delete this? Do we want to check that we might want to use it for a cross-reference? So I could just make up a number and say it's 100,000, but we try to be accurate and honest.
so if you wrote the big gnarly query that goes through all of your MARC records and looks in all the places where an authority number might live and spits out a table that is just your list of unique authority IDs that are currently in use, what if you had Koha run that report and save the results into the saved SQL table? So then you have that list of authority numbers as just a list that the report can just take and use and doesn't need to do any extra calculation with. I wonder if then that would simplify the whole query enough that you could take that saved static list of authority IDs are in use and say, okay, Koha, tell me every authority in my big pile of authorities that is not in this saved list.
Actually, that's good. I could certainly do counts that way as well, because if I had all those, just subtract that from my overall number of authorities, that's the ones that are not used. So thank you for that idea. We will try that.
Yeah, if nothing else, I guess it would be a long, boring afternoon writing separate queries for all the different types of authorities. But it would at least get you to counts.
Well, I could start with one anyway. If I started, say, with one, just start building it up. No, thank you. That's a good idea. Try that.
That's part of where my brain breaks every time I start thinking about authorities is, wait, there's how many places those numbers can live? Oh,
yeah,
geez.
it's just...
Who invented this MARC stuff?
Yeah. I see most of the time the library isn't even aware of them because they've come in on imported records, maybe from the Library of Congress, and
Sure.
like whose library matches the level of cataloging that the Library of Congress use.
Yeah, not to sell our catalogers short, but not us.
So I ran that report, and there's one odd thing, which is the very first line has no library branch listed, and it has over 1,000 checkouts on it. Can you think of what situation that might be indicative of?
It could be checkouts that were imported in. If somehow they came in without a branch at which that transaction happened, but then I actually don't know why those would be in statistics at all.
If you look at some of those transactions and they're very old, it may well be that from earlier releases, there were little problems in there that have since been eliminated.
Well, we just moved to Koha about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks
Oh,
ago.
right, okay.
So it's more likely to be a migration issue. I just didn't know if there was something that others have encountered.
I can't think of a rational reason why your data would end up that way through normal use. So yeah, migration issue sounds very promising.
But actually, you should probably record that somewhere so that in 5 years' time, when you do a query and you think, where did those transactions come from? And you'll have forgotten that we talked about it today.
Yes.
Or you could just build in ignorance. I have that too. I just ran that report too. I was gonna say you could build in ignorance by putting a where statement that says don't include things where the branch is null. But I wonder if you could run a report on things where the branch is null to see if there's any more information there.
Yeah. I'm
Mine
like,
shows 2,000 renewals and 0 checkouts for null branch. So I wonder if it's not associating a branch with the renewals for some reason. Or it didn't at some point for me. I have old data though. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just saying that I'm like a toddler right now. I'm barely making it across the room before I fall down and scuff my knee.
You're approaching the world with a spirit of excitement and exploration. Combining our two themes of upgrades and reports. Has anybody put any thought into the change to how local use is recorded? I know that will change some reports for us. Now that we're getting an actual local use field in the item record. Although now as I'm saying that, is that 2405 or does that come later? Can't remember. Nor do I, for that matter, remember if it's gonna like retroactively build that number.
I don't know what you're talking about. Can you elaborate?
Oh, it's a bug. And now I'm gonna have to look it up. Maybe I'm misremembering. There's a bug to create a new field in the item record that is a local use count. So like right now, the item record has item.issues. That's the lifetime count of checkouts. That is a slightly distinct number from if you ask Koha to give you all of the entries in the statistics table of type issue tied to that item number. So right now for local use, there is only the statistics table. You can find all the entries in statistics for that item that say local use. But Koha is adding a field in the item record directly that just stores that count as a static number that you can query whenever you want, which will be nice. It will simplify circulation reports, but it'll be a thing to adapt to. And now I got to find that bug number. This is when I find out I've gone mad and the bug never did exist.
I can remember seeing something like that too. So it's not you. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, bug 16122. And it is in 2405. So this is a thing that shouldn't break any existing reports, but it will probably give you a way to make new reports easier and more accurate. Okay, and there is I see that one of the patches in there is a script to update local use from the stats table. So that's good. To like make your old data accurate. Well, folks, we're bumping up on time. Any last questions or issues or comments? Chip, is your koha alive yet?
No, no
Sorry.
word. Yeah, that's okay. We're making big lists of things to check as soon as it's up. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a shower thought this morning about how I really should develop some sort of post-upgrade like test plan.
Mhm.
That'd be a good thing to have written down.
Yeah, yeah. It's usually one of those things you think about doing, but never get
Yeah.
around to doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
who's got time for that? I have to do all this
yeah.
testing after my upgrade.
Mhm. All right.
Well, folks, it's been swell. Please have a wonderful Tuesday. For those of you suffering upgrade woes, I hope they resolve quickly.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
This group is great. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.